All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. We're going to hear about Livongo's messaging and media relations strategy for an award-winning initial public offering, or IPO. During this webinar, we're going to discuss how Livongo crafted strategic press announcements and unique messaging to set a new industry benchmark with a highly successful IPO, and how they used Onclusive to connect their national media campaign to tangible financial results. Let's meet our speaker today. Jake Mazanke is the Corporate Communications Manager at Livongo, where he leads public relations, media relations, social media, executive communications, speaking, and internal communications. His accomplishments during Livongo's initial public offering process were recognized by PR Daily as the National Media Campaign of the Year, and Livongo is a finalist for the 2020 North America SABRE Awards, which are going to be presented next month. Livongo is a leading digital health company that offers a platform to care for the whole person and empowers people with chronic conditions to live better and healthier lives, beginning with diabetes and now including hypertension, weight management, diabetes prevention, and behavioral health. Livongo pioneered the category of Apply Health Signals to offer members clinically based insights that make it easier to stay healthy. Livongo's team of data scientists aggregate and interpret substantial amounts of health data and information to create actionable, personalized, and timely health signals delivered to Livongo's members exactly when and where they need them. The Livongo approach delivers better clinical and financial outcomes while creating a different and better experience for people with chronic conditions. And I'm Greg D'Andrea. I'm Director of Customer Success and Insights Lead here at Onclusive, formerly known as Air PR. I've been implementing and managing global media measurement programs for nearly 20 years and have a true passion for helping communications professionals reach their strategic goals. And for those of you who don't know Onclusive yet, we are the data science company for communicators. Our software empowers PR and content teams to measure the actual business impact of PR and content marketing across the entire consumer journey, including reader engagement, brand impact, and sales. Today, we'll hear from Jake about the challenges Livongo faced prior to the IPO and how the company set itself up for award-winning success. He'll walk us through the IPO media campaign objectives and the strategy deployed around press relations and unique messaging. And then we'll take a peek into the Onclusive analytics platform to see some key results. Finally, we'll wrap up with takeaway and Q&A. As always, you can submit your questions to us throughout the presentation by using the Zoom Q&A feature, and we'll address your questions at the end. So thanks so much for joining us today, Jake. I couldn't be more excited to talk with you about Livongo's outstanding IPO media campaign success and how you got there. First, though, you did tell us leading up to the IPO, there was a major consideration that had to do with the state of the digital health industry. We'd love to hear you tell us a little bit more about that.
My pleasure, Greg. Thanks for having me, and thanks all of you guys for joining today. So I want to start by setting the scene and provide a snapshot going into Livongo's IPO. So in 2018, venture capital poured a record-breaking $8.1 billion worth of funding into digital health. And while the industry did not lack in funding, it did lack one key component, which I'm sure you can assume, a successful initial public offering. In fact, there were no digital health IPOs between 2016 and 2019. With an influx of funding and a significant IPO drought, investors began to wonder if the industry would be able to sustain the momentum much longer. In early 2019, we began preparing to go public. To give you guys some context, Livongo is the leading consumer digital health company with validated studies that show how our integrated solution makes it easier for people with chronic and behavioral health conditions to stay healthy. Our clients include 20% of the Fortune 500 companies, major health plans, and the two largest pharmacy benefit managers as both clients and partners. Despite our market success, different approach, and huge opportunity, we didn't have the national recognition we needed going into the IPO. In addition, at times we were compared with some of the other digital health solutions that did not have the same clinical results nor the same market traction.
That sounds like quite a hurdle to overcome, Jake. Going against the industry tide and breaking out not only as a unicorn, but a true industry leader requires a brilliant strategy and flawless execution. That being said, I'd love to talk about the objectives of your campaign and the strategy Livongo used leading up to the award-winning IPO. Jake, can you take us through how Livongo thought about the IPO media campaign and what were the primary objectives you were looking to achieve?
Absolutely. So our main objective was to initiate a significant national media campaign to validate our position as the market leader in consumer digital health and build brand awareness for an impending IPO. So the specific goals of the campaign, which you can see on the slide, were first, we wanted to run with a narrative that would land high impact stories. Second, we wanted to land high caliber media placements by positioning Livongo's IPO as the litmus test for the digital health industry. We used this positioning in all of our media outreach, and it played a huge part in our success, and there's a lot more to come on that. Third, we wanted to increase brand awareness. Fourth, we wanted to solidify Livongo as the leader of the digital health industry. 5, we wanted to differentiate our solution from competitors.
Wow, super ambitious goals, Jake. I mean, given the full lull in the digital health industry that you described just a few minutes ago, and these lofty objectives, I'm sure there was no shortage of challenges in front of the team at the outset of the campaign. Can you share with us what you faced in bringing everything together?
Indeed, there were definitely some challenges we needed to overcome. And first and foremost, we're on a super tight time frame. And by tight, we actually only had 5 months from the time we started the process until we filed our S1. So for those who have done this before, you guys can appreciate that time crunch. And for those who have not, most companies take about 18 to 24 months to build their story and prepare. And in our situation, we just started interviewing our banks in January. So I'll emphasize how crucial our timing was throughout the webinar. Second, we have a 2-person communications team. It's me and Livongo's VP of Corporate Comms, John Halleck, who I see is on today. Hello, John. John's great and has taken 2 other companies public. But even with the experience with a small team and no agency support, it presented definite challenges to both of us. So third, during the time frame, due to our time frame, there were certain pieces of news that we needed to get out to include in our S1 before the quiet period. So again, there's going to be an emphasis on timing throughout the whole webinar, which was critical for every single announcement. Finally, since we position our IPO as the litmus test for the digital health industry, there was inherent risk of backlash from investors and from the industry at large.
Really formidable challenges, Jake. And your team did an amazing job facing each of them head on with your well thought out strategy. Let's talk about that now. Can you please describe the approach you took and the different tactics you executed?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. So we started with 5 key press announcements that we scheduled before the IPO and announced in short proximity to create a clear drumbeat that maximized buzz. Again, we're going to talk about the time frame here. We also granted key reporters access to executives and our story. Again, more on that, but strong media relations was a key to our success. Before we get to the announcements, I also want to add that events were critical for us. So in 2019, we landed a lot of top tier speaking events. And these events were another way for us to tell our story and, most importantly, build relationships with reporters. So to begin the drumbeat, on January 30th, Livongo announced its acquisition of MyStrength, which was the leading behavioral health solution. Why was this important? Livongo members living with chronic conditions were more likely to have behavioral health issues, and we knew that we needed to address this for our members, most importantly, but also for the market, as this was a huge question for us. So then around the same time as the MyStrength news, we granted Maureen Farrell, who's the lead Wall Street Journal equities and IPO reporter, access to Livongo management investors. This set the stage for her to break our story. And in early February, she did exactly that. You can see a screenshot of that story on the top right of the screen here. Maureen used the extensive background interviews to talk about our impending IPO. And this story set off a cascading media cycle with reporters across the industry covering the impact of a potential IPO. This showed that we didn't have to just have a press announcement to get that coverage. By granting that access, we were able to set off another media cycle of its own, which was exciting. And now this was just the first story for Maureen, and she ended up covering our entire IPO process, which successfully primed the investor community. Again, timing was critical for these stories, and that we had to have these run prior to when we filed to go public. And also, while the Wall Street Journal story was incredibly valuable, we wanted to balance out that investor-focused media with stories focused on our approach and our impact. So soon after that story ran, We worked with Inc. on a feature on how Livongo leverages data to create a better healthcare experience. And this was exactly the type of 1-2 punch we needed to start strong. So then on February 28th, we leveraged Livongo's thought leadership conference, Signum, to announce that that Amazon Lex and Amazon Poly, which is the engine behind Amazon's voice technology, would power our hypertension product. We also invited key business media to the event. And in fact, CNBC healthcare reporter Christina Farr wrote an article on how the Signum conference attendees could sign up to wear a continuous glucose monitor at the event. It was a great interest piece and helped highlight the event and our product innovations. Following the conference, we secured our first live television interview with CNBC, and this was the beginning of a great relationship for us. And we had 6 feature interviews with CNBC in 2019, including when we were a private company, which was a huge deal. So then on March 15th, we announced a study which demonstrated that people with diabetes and high blood pressure who used Livongo saw significant blood pressure improvement within 6 weeks. From an earned media perspective, this was not our strongest announcement, but it was definitely one of our most important. So first, I have to emphasize that this information is vital to Livongo clients and members, and we want to show our results to them every day. Second, the study showed our strong results across conditions, and it was an important piece of our news that we included in our S1 and had to get out before we filed to go public. Then on April 4th, we collaborated with the Amazon Alexa PR team to promote our new HIPAA-compliant Amazon Alexa healthcare skill. So Amazon put out an announcement that Livongo is one of 6 companies to unveil the new skills, and we also issued our own press release with more details on the skill.
Super cool, Jake.
Absolutely. And all in all, this was actually our most successful pre-IPO announcement. We had 74 influential earned media placements within 5 days, and that's a huge number for us. And these included the Wall Street Journal, CNBC, mentions in Fast Company, The Verge, TechCrunch, VentureBeat, and a whole host of healthcare trade journals as well. So to cap off this campaign, our founder and executive chairman went on Fox Business's Mornings with Maria to discuss the skill. And you can see a screenshot of that in the top right corner. And they actually played our video showing how a member could interact with the skill on national TV, which was really, really good for us. And to emphasize the impact we had here, this was really our launching point from a brand awareness perspective that set up our successful IPO.
Awesome.
So after Alexa, we quickly neared our quiet period, and timing was, again, super, super important here. It's also when our media relations became extremely vital, because once you enter the quiet period, your opportunity to talk with reporters is over. So to cap our pre-IPO campaign, the day before we filed our S1, we announced a smartwatch integration. Now, companies don't typically do this so close to the IPO, but we were able to do it because of really close collaboration with our product and legal teams, so they could stay informed on the timing. And we wanted to make sure we could get this announcement out because we had to include this information in our S1. So to emphasize all of this, CNBC reporter Chrissy Farr wrote a great piece on the news, and we saw it as a strong final feature right before the S1. Now, fast forward a few days. Now that the S1 was filed, I want to talk a bit about how our media relations strategy came into play during the quiet period. So as part of the speaking strategy I talked about, in early 2019, we cultivated a relationship with the lead healthcare reporter at Financial Times. Through the relationship, we had multiple interviews early in the year, and these interviews actually set the stage for her to write in-depth feature, which ran after we filed our S1 and could no longer speak to media. This story created buzz during a potential downtime and set the stage for European investors to learn more about Livongo.
Thanks for taking us through that, Jake. I mean, really a great approach there to impactful press releases and unique messaging leading up to the IPO. I think now, though, everyone is really ready to hear about your award-winning results.
Absolutely. So the overall results have been truly unprecedented, not just for Livongo, but for the entire consumer digital health industry. So in 2019, we had more than 6,000 earned media placements. And of the total coverage, more than 1,800 articles were classified as influential in terms of relevance, reputation, and reception by Onclusive. And we actually, we take into that 1,800 number in account in our internal reporting. So I also want to talk a little bit about the timing here. So not only did the coverage spike with the IPO, but it actually stayed at a similar pace through the remainder of the year. And we've seen this pull through 2020. That's exactly what we were looking for. And we wanted the IPO to be a really strong branding event for Livongo and not just a blip on the screen. So according to Onclusive, this total influential coverage had a potential reach of nearly 9 billion people. Taking a step back, for comparison, in 2018, we had just 318 influential earned media placements that had a potential reach of 1.4 billion people. So that the comparison there is a 543% increase. So now looking at the coverage, I want to talk a little bit about how our media strategy came to life during and slightly after the IPO. So the day after the IPO, the Wall Street Journal actually called Livongo a litmus test for the digital health sector overall. So for us, we were able to see this messaging, which we had established 7 months prior, and ended up in the Wall Street Journal the day after the IPO. It was a perfect ending for our campaign. Our IPO ended up garnering even more significant media opportunities, including a feature interview on CNBC Squawk Alley, another TV interview on Fox Business This Mornings with Maria, and 2 Wall Street Journal articles by Maureen Farrell and Heather Mack. More exciting than the coverage overall was our overall sentiment. There were actually no negative articles about Livongo throughout the IPO process, and that's something that we were both really extremely proud of. So a week after the IPO, Fortune magazine ended up publishing a multimedia feature about our journey that included a full media package with interviews that were filmed on the IPO day and quotes from a Livongo member. We originally pitched this idea months earlier as a way to cap off the IPO, and we felt it was important to balance the financial coverage, including all the stuff that we got from the Wall Street Journal and CNBC, with a story that focused on our culture. We designed this story to run the week after the IPO to fill any coverage void, and it was extremely successful for us. So most importantly, on IPO day, we saw the stock price rise more than 40%. For us, this was the ultimate validation for our business, mission, and the months of preparation, but it was also a great indicator of the overall excitement surrounding the company and what we had spent months and months working towards. It shows how a national media campaign can lead to those financial results.
Yeah, and what's great about this, Jake, is that not only, obviously you had the IPO, and you can see there on this slide that 29% of your overall coverage related specifically to the IPO. But I want to, look at that number, nearly 500% increase from 2018, which just shows that it wasn't just the IPO, it was all of your comms efforts prior to that and after that that kept that churning, and that's a really testament to the team efforts there.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. So when talking, so we're stepping forward to social media amplification. And so when we look at our results here, we always start with earned media because we leverage our earned media content to drive our other channels. So there's no better example of this than on social media, which saw monumental improvements in 2019. So across our own Twitter and LinkedIn channels, there was an 87% increase in terms of reach and 105% increase in terms of engagement. Most promising, although we pushed out nearly 3 times as much content in 2019, our overall click-through rate was nearly 1% higher than the year previous. So we were getting that reach, engagement on a consistent basis, and that's what we wanted to show. So looking at the graph here shows how the emphasis on engaging with key reporters and industry influencers helped further spread our messages. So according to this graph, in 2019, our earned media articles had more than 191,000 organic shares across Facebook and Twitter, which again was a 500% increase from 2018. This shows exactly how the high quality earned media coverage can help drive the conversation across channels. And here you can see exactly which articles drove the most social amplification. And I want to kind of dive into these and tell some background stories and exactly how we approached them and why it drove impact. So the most amplified article on the top left was called Death by 1,000 Clicks, where electronic health records went wrong. So this article featured Livongo founder and executive chairman Glenn Tolman, who you've seen throughout the presentation, who was previously the CEO of EHR, an e-prescribing company which was Allscripts. And so coming into the situation, some people would actually shy away from this story because it could be seen as negative, but we decided to embrace it. We saw a great opportunity for our spokesperson to provide his perspective on the electronic health records industry as a leader, And for Livongo, we saw the opportunity to take it one step further and talk about how we had the opportunity to drive impact with health consumers, unlike electronic health records could do. And this piece was received super positively by the industry. So then if you look to the right, this is a CNBC article that came through our relationship with digital health reporter Chrissy Farr, who I've mentioned several times already. She came to us for comment on a story on Amazon Care, which was a new health initiative for Amazon employees. And so we saw it as another opportunity, again, to show our industry leadership and to provide our comment on a really important trending topic. Also of note, Amazon is a Livongo client, and we collaborate with them on multiple products. So it was really good for us to be able to provide positive support on all fronts here. Next, we're looking at a piece here from the Robert F. Kennedy Ripple of Hope Awards. And this was actually an award that our founder and executive chairman, Glenn Tolman, won, and we activated from a multitude of perspectives. And I wanted to highlight this because although events don't always show up on a platform like Onclusive, we utilized events to drive our social media and build relationships with key reporters. In this case, you see a really, really high number of amplification here. When Glenn was honored, we tried to activate this. And again, it was really, really positive for our company. So finally, I'm going to highlight that people love awards. So in 2019, Livongo won more than 15 awards, which led to some great articles, landing pages, and other promotions. And you could see right here, those awards were making a huge impact for our amplification overall. At the end of the day, I see my responsibility as driving the conversation and telling our story about our great work and what our company is doing and what we're achieving. So whether it's through press releases, earned media, awards, events, or social media, we take an integrated approach to drive outcomes, and you can see exactly how that surfaced in this slide.
Yeah, the words were amazing, Jake. And actually, we're going to spend a little bit of time in a slide coming up here about awards specifically.
Absolutely. So now we're going to dive a little bit into the website traffic driven, and Onclusive as a platform does a really great job of tracking from the article itself back to your website. And this is something that we take a look at as well. And why this was important to us, not only leading up to the IPO, but actually especially after the IPO, is because as a newly public company, and we're different from anything on the market today, we see it as really vital to being able to tell our story. So our website's a great tool to do that. And we focused on driving meaningful traffic back to the website so we could prime the investment community on exactly what we were doing. So in 2019, we had nearly 26,000 total website visits that came directly from our earned media hits, which compared to 7,000 in 2018. Large increase there. And by leveraging the Onclusive PR attribution solution, we're able to track how much traffic each piece of content actually drives and tailor our strategy around that as well. So now we're going to take a look at the top coverage driving website traffic. So as you can see here, the articles that drove the most website traffic were very different than those that drove the most social media amplification. So in the social media amplification slide, you saw a lot of our big product announcements and industry analysis, which is going to drive that social media buzz. In this slide, you see it's mostly investor-related content, which was driving the most website hits. And to us, this wasn't surprising and something that we kind of anticipated, because once we went public, we wanted investors to learn more about the company and come back to our website, and we can see that this actually happened here. So now to the website actions driven. So thanks again to the Onclusive PR attribution solution, we were able to quantify the number of specific website actions driven by our earned media. So in total, we reported over 10,000 website engagements in 2019, which is a whopping 1,300% increase. And similar to the media coverage, we can see here is the biggest website activity spike during and around the time of the IPO. But that increase did sustain throughout the year, and we have seen this through 2020. Again, what our goal is looking at.
Up 1,300%, Jake. I mean, that's really amazing.
Yeah, we're excited about that one. So we're going to take a look at the message optimization here. And so to understand the impact of our focused messaging strategy, Livongo is the litmus test of the digital health industry. We looked at the NEO messaging tool to see exactly how that drove impact.
Yeah, and for those of you who have not yet used it or know about it, NEO stands for News Engine Optimization. I guess the best way to think about it is about NEO is it's basically SEO for PR. So in other words, optimizing your sound bites based on actual business outcomes.
And when you look at this NEO messaging here, it shows how we delivered on our strategy. So like we discussed, the whole idea was to focus on the digital health industry. And as you can see, it came through in many of the articles at the top there. The pull through was over 1,000, which was really exciting. So the other theme that you're going to see is the conditions that we cover. So hypertension, behavioral health, and diabetes prevention. So as we briefly mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, Livongo's flagship solution is our diabetes management. But in 2019, we wanted to promote the other conditions within our platform. So the impact here was through our announcements with Amazon and the MyStrength acquisition, we were able to drive that earned media coverage around those other conditions and our whole person platform, which was extremely valuable to us. And finally, I want to touch on something which you see the solid pickup in regards to applied health signals. Again, we mentioned this slightly earlier, but for a little bit more context, in 2018, we launched the applied health signals category. And since we are the category pioneer, it took some time for the media to recognize this category. But as we continue to tell our story and get that high quality earned media, we're seeing widespread adoption of this terminology and of the category.
Wow. I mean, these are all really impressive accomplishments, Jake. I mean, not only did Livongo end the 3-year digital health IPO drought, but you've set very high standards for the rest of the industry with your influential media coverage, the social media amplification results, and the lasting impact your story has had in the market. And of course, we love to see all of the website activity that you were able to influence with your spot-on content and unique messaging, and track directly to your communications efforts. Congratulations on these tremendous accomplishments, seriously.
Thanks, Greg, really appreciate it.
So let's talk about those awards. It's no surprise that after hearing all of this, Livongo won a whopping 15 awards during the course of the pivotal year in the history of your company, including Fortune magazine's Best Places to Work, leading all digital health companies, Best Workplaces for Millennials in 2019, Chicago's 100 Best Places to Work 2019, and Silicon Valley's 2019 Women of Influence. And you also won several PR-specific awards for your 2019 national media campaign. Would love to hear you tell us a little bit more about all of these.
Absolutely. So we're extremely proud of our accomplishments, and especially given the time frame, resources, and the expectations, we're pleased with the impact we had here. And of course, I have to mention that there's always room for improvement. But like we said, we're looking to sustain that momentum into 2020, and so far, so good. And finally, I'm going to put in a quick plug because after this webinar, we're kind of putting a bow on this whole IPO campaign as the finalist for the 2020 North American SABRE Awards, which we're going to actually find out the results on February 12th in my hometown of Chicago. So we're really excited for that and what's ahead.
Oh, awesome. Best of luck with that as well, Jake. So now let's get into a little bit of some key takeaways here. Thank you, Jake, for generously sharing all of those exciting results. Companies that provide a different product, solution, or story are the most interesting. I mean, think about the most successful companies over the past decade. All of them presented a solution unlike anything else on the market. And at the same time, you do not want to be so different that people don't understand what you do. Determining relatable messaging based on a broad topic or storyline can help grab people's attention, establish further mind share, and better explain what you do. Define your narrative, establish a drumbeat, and put yourself out there. This was nothing more than a few impactful announcements and really an old school media relations. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone.
That's the key one there. We love the phones.
Exactly. And before each announcement, take a step back and think about how it fits into your broader narrative. Anticipate the impact and pull the right levers to ensure it is shared appropriately. Especially on a shortened timeline, not every piece of news can be a home run. When you get a significant piece of news, make sure all of the pieces are in place to maximize what you have. I mean, really, there is a fine line between having a plan and executing. Everyone has a plan. You have to execute it. So before we go into the Q&A, We'd love to get some final thoughts from you on this, Jake.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned this a little bit on the earned media slide, but what we were most excited about and the biggest impact we drove was the fact that we saw all of this coverage lead to that 40% stock price increase on IPO day. And that's the type of impact that we're looking to drive and something that we're super proud of. And really all we did here, Greg mentioned it's been a lot of old school media relations. And the idea was just create a consistent drumbeat of news. And we wanted to set the standard of coverage around the industry. And I'm gonna leave on one final note. So we also, through Onclusive, we track our share of voice compared to our top 5 competitors. And since 2019, we've been the industry leader in terms of overall earned media coverage and the potential reach there. So our share of voice in terms of coverage and reach are both above 60%, and we nearly doubled them from 2018. And this is something that John and I, my boss John, we talk about all the time, and something that we're extremely proud of. It speaks to our impact, and we've really raised the profile of the entire industry.
That's awesome. So once again, congratulations, Jake. It's a really well-executed strategy, groundbreaking results, and I think you've really set a gold standard here, not just for the digital health industry, but also for all of the growth companies out there. Now it's time to open it up for some questions. I'm going to be checking that queue, so just give me a second here to go ahead and find some questions. Let's see. Here's one, Jake. Oh, this is a good one. You say establish a drumbeat and pick up the phones, but how did you go about securing earned media coverage for these announcements?
Absolutely. Thanks, Greg. So I think there's a few things here. So as we discussed in the key takeaways, preparation's key here. So we try to get ahead of these announcements as much as possible. And then after we start to think through how we're going to position it, what we're going to do, we immediately go to the media relations piece. And through that, we start to look at reporters, their recent coverage, how they might position it. And we try to go to the reporters as soon as possible, give them news under embargo, and get our executives in front of them. This does a few things. One, we're really helping out that reporter because as you all know, deadlines are extremely tight. They're pushing out a lot of content. So the more time you can give them, the more they're going to appreciate it, the more you can build that relationship and that trust. And second, the more time you can give them with your executives and time to think about that story, the higher quality that story is going to be. And this is something that I think led to the quality of our overall pieces leading into this campaign. Some of the headlines you saw were really, really high quality. And that's because we were able to give a lot of time with our executives, time to chew on the news, opportunity to talk to them. And that's really all it is just giving them the opportunity and pushing it out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question here. Could you say more about how you place value on potential customer numbers? The direct clicks make sense, but why was it so important to Livongo that those potential customer numbers were high?
Absolutely. So that's a great question. So there's two pieces here. So one, obviously we're trying to push back clients and prospects to our website so they can learn more. And then we have a contact form as well, which we're able to track and see which clients came from an article, went and might have filled out a contact form. So that's a big piece. But for this topic specifically, we want to drive people back to our website, and we want now that we're public, there's a lot of investors out there. Like I mentioned, we're very different from anything else in the industry. And so we want to drive them back and be able to tell our story. So we do have a few clicks based on our video views, case study downloads, things of that nature. So those are going to show that we're really getting people interested about the company and driving that impact there.
Great. Let's see here. Here's a good one. I noticed you use a message pull-through analysis. How did you use this information to effectively inform your PR strategy?
Absolutely. So I think going into it was a lot of instincts on exactly how we were going to position this. But we looked at the NEO messaging after what we did, and that was one of the biggest aha moments for me. And the excitement around the impact we were driving from an earned media perspective on literally all the pieces that we wanted to hit throughout the year. We are measured internally based on promoting our category. And so seeing those hits was really important for us internally. Driving impact across the industry is something we set out to do. And then obviously promoting our whole person platform as well, which I mentioned. We started with diabetes. That's what we're most well known for, but we want to talk about how we're impacting those other conditions as well. And we're able to drive that conversation.
So someone wants to know why you didn't bring on a PR firm prior to the IPO.
So Greg, that's a great question. I would have loved to bring on a PR firm. As we mentioned, it's a two-man team. Given the timing that we picked our banks in January, we filed our S1 at the end of June, and then we went public in July. We really didn't have time to onboard a PR agency, quite frankly. Would have loved to help, would have loved to brought someone on, but it was fast and furious. I remember the moment when John, my boss, sat me down in a room and said, Jake, strap up. We're about to go public. This is the fastest I've ever seen. It's going to be a ride, and just be prepared. And from that moment on, it was an absolute sprint to get the news out. We kind of had that in place, so there was the preparation there. But really, we just had to operate at a really high level and move extremely fast and efficiently to get through. And I actually think that having a two-man team, although it's a ton of work, it's played to our advantage. We're extremely nimble. We work together really closely, and we're able to facilitate and do things quickly just because it's the two of us. And it played to our advantage here, but we are looking to build out the team. So excited for that as well.
Yeah, just the two of you to pull this off is quite a feat, and I think it speaks to a lot of the awards you guys are getting. Here's a good one. From a communication standpoint, what's the biggest change you've experienced going from private to public?
Yeah, absolutely. So I talked a little bit about telling our story. And so one of the challenges that we faced after going public was that we aren't like anything on the market today. Now, we'll have people come up to us, and some people classify us as a healthcare IT company. Well, we're definitely not that. Some people, they'll define us as a medical device company. And although we do have medical devices, that's not all we do. Some people say that we're a coaching company. And although we do have health coaches that interact with our members every day, we're not a coaching company. And so we actually combine all of those details and others, including data science and behavioral enablement and things that you see in other Silicon Valley companies, to create a different solution. And so the market struggled a little bit to understand exactly what we were doing. So we're really focused on telling our story to investors and to people at large. The other piece is just being, obviously from a regulatory standpoint, we always operated as if we were a public company. So our regulations have been super tight. So that wasn't a huge change. Just being a little bit more careful and aware there. And then finally, I think the providing guidance piece, we've been very clear through our commercial announcements, if we're announcing a big client or partner, what it means for the business. And so from a communications perspective, investigating that, understanding what that impact is, and figuring out the exact way to communicate that with the market at large.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback off that a little bit, there's another question here around how Livongo's success has impacted the digital health industry in general.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, we have for healthcare, our valuation was extremely high. It was the third largest healthcare IPO ever. It was the largest digital health IPO in history. And so you see the downstream effect on other companies and their valuations as the excitement builds about our industry. So I think that's the impact you're seeing. But again, going back to telling our story, as the first company to go public in this environment, really, really focused on telling our story and having people understand what we do, our impact, and even more importantly, the overall opportunity.
How about the logic that went into the KPIs you chose to measure? Yep.
Few things here. So when we look at our results across comms at Livongo, we always start with earned media. And the earned media is the pieces, the really high quality content that are going to drive everything else. So we would start with earned media. We look at how it's driving our social, and not only in terms of reach, but in terms of that engagement. and how much we're getting people to interact with our content, look at our content, and see that as valuable. And then downstream, we're looking at those website visits as well, and making sure that we're converting on those opportunities when people are interested in the company.
Great, great, great. And just trying to pick one more. Some of these we've kind of already answered through some other questions. And I guess this one here is just overall strategy going into 2019, if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so as I kind of mentioned before, it was a really fast and furious process. So we didn't have time to go write up a 30-page report, present it to our executives, get it picked apart, refine it, and go execute it. It was kind of, okay, ready, set, go, and we went with it. So we knew with the broad messaging framework what we had. We knew the big pieces of news that were coming, and it really just came down to executing. And you know, I'm really pleased with how it all turned out, especially from an earned media perspective, an awareness perspective was super positive. But again, this was nothing more than just understanding what we needed to do and going out and doing it. So, you know, that's another piece I'm really proud of. No time to pull that full report together. We just kind of did it, and it turned out extremely, extremely well. And huge credit to John, who I said, you know, taking 2 other companies public, you know, had done this before. So had that experience to really pull us along and lead us through that.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. And I think that, you know, I had a great time working with you through this process, and it was great to kind of be on the outside looking in here and just helping you provide, helping provide some data for you to kind of work with. But it was really amazing to see what you guys were able to accomplish over the last year, especially with all the news leading up to the IPO, and then the IPO, and then the continuation of coverage that came in after that.
Thanks, Greg. Actually, I'll give a quick plug for Greg, who you know, right after the IPO ended, I was on a plane on the way back from New York to Chicago. I was extremely tired, had a lot of work to do, and I actually called Greg, and he was able to pull all of our reports together while I was on the airplane, and I was able to easily and quickly kick it over to our executives and do live reporting, you know, in the midst of everything else going on. So thanks, Greg, for that. And Onclusive was a really, really great partner for us throughout this process. So
hey, when one of my customers is at 30,000 feet, Jake, and they're asking for something, I definitely want to make sure I can deliver on that. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. Much appreciation to Jake for sharing his success story with us. Don't forget, you can learn more by emailing info@onclusive.com. And you can keep an eye out in your email for the full recording of this, probably tomorrow. And have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.